Hello and hello and welcome to today's video. I hope that you can see me okay. I'm kind of experimenting with lighting and trying to see what works out best. Gosh, it has been forever since I have done a YouTube live stream video. So, if I could get a couple comments just to make sure that you guys could hear me okay and that everything is going all right here, that would be really awesome. So I'm going to just say hi to those who are joining in. We have Missy and Kevin and Vic and Megan. Thank you so much for joining. That's awesome. So I'm good. Okay, Megan gave me the good. I'm good. Okay, so I had an idea for a video today, and it came from one of my students. So she had just asked me about a clinic that she wanted to attend, and she wanted to know my opinion, which I think is really awesome. That one of my students would reach out to me and say, "Hey, what's your opinion on this?" And from my perspective as an instructor, as a trainer, as a teacher, as a friend, as a barn mom, all these things, I really want to encourage everybody to get out there and learn. It's really important to me that everybody that's kind of involved in my barn and everything just continues education. I don't expect it to be with me, but I do expect them to keep learning because I think it's really important. Um, if you haven't met Cinder, this is Cinder. She is like the best. She's the best little sidekick ever. So she's always got to be on my lap. But anyway, so what I want to share with you is just kind of like my journey with finding the right trainers and sort of my take on all of it. So like I said, student of mine wanted to know about a clinic, and I gave her a real short, yeah, I think you should, I think you should do it. Take what you feel like you can from it and leave what you can't. And I really wish that I had understood that in the beginning, because I would have saved myself so much money, so much grief, so much struggle, and everything in between. Hey, Jim, thanks for joining. Um, so, see, guys, I have this chat on. For those of you who are new to live streams, there's a chat that goes on in the side. So if you're watching this after the live stream, all you have to do is click on the chat part and you can read everything that's going on. But it's really hard for me to do a live stream video and not say hi to everybody in the comments, because I just want to talk to everybody. And it's weird to have a one-sided conversation like this. So anyway, um, okay. So my my hold on, I can't read my own writing. Okay, so my experience and my story. I don't like using the term self-taught, okay? So, but I thought that that's kind of, well, that it is kind of what I was for a long time. And hi Charlie, thanks for joining. And but if somebody Cinder, come here. Um what my dog does when I'm sitting here and she's not on my lap or she's not on the bed, whatever, she walks around and licks the wood. So my bed is wood and then my nightstand is wood, and she likes to lick it. So she's distracting me because she's licking the wood on my bed. Come here. Come here. Come here. You need to stop doing that just because it's funny. So if anybody knows why my dog likes to lick would, leave a comment and let me know why you think she might be doing that, because it's really funny to me. Okay, so anyway, I grew up with horses, and I've had horses since the day I was born. My mom rode horses since she was a kid. She rode when she was pregnant. So I've been around horses my entire life. So I have a lot of life experience to go with my actual education with horses. So, but I recall, and my mom was a trainer, my mom gave lessons, but if you've ever tried to, anybody that has a parent who does something that you also do understands, or even like spouses, it is very difficult to learn from a parent about something like that, about a passion, okay? Or I mean, it's definitely possible. So like I teach my kids about riding, about their horsemanship, but it's just different. My kids have a tendency to listen better or get more from listening to a different trainer. So, like Missy says that she could never teach her daughter, and I so get that. So, when I was a kid, I really looked up to my mom and everything that she did. I saw all the good things that she did. She helped people all the time, and I just really admired that so much, and I knew that I wanted to be like that, okay? So, um, but what the funny part is like she would try to explain something to me, try to do this or try to do that, and I would be like, I know better than you know, kind of deal. Like I just didn't listen. I didn't listen ever. And it was better for me to watch her and let her be an example that way than it was for me to actually be told what to do by my mother. Um, and so like if she was giving a lesson to other kids or if she was helping somebody, um, Vic says lemon pledge with the no, I don't use lemon pledge. No. So, but good, that's a good thought. Okay, so but watching her be a good example, I think was what I got the most experience from. Okay. So, but if she ever tried to like teach me something, we would just get crabby with each other. You know what I mean? So if you can relate to that, leave a comment and tell me about your experience with that. But um my mom trained a lot of horses when I was a kid. She would bring in horses that she found um relatively inexpensive or horses that were not trained, and she would spend, you know, the summer or a few months or whatever working with them, training them. She would hand them off to me and I would trail ride or do whatever, you know, and I was probably, I don't know, 10ish, like when this sort of stuff when I kind of started being part of all that. And so um I learned a lot through my own personal experience, and I always had a horse, and my best friend, she lived, oh, half mile away. And so through the woods, like we would just walk to each other's houses. And she had a horse. Um, hey Beck, thanks for joining. So she had a horse boarded at my parents' house. So we just hung out on our horses all the time. And I have to tell you guys a story because this just popped into my mind. And since I'm talking about it, I might as well. And I've probably said it somewhere on my channel before, but it's a good story. So my mom always told me that she would trust me until she had a reason not to. And I listened to that because nothing that my mom ever said was not she was very serious about everything that she said. Like my mom was always very very kind and gentle and all that, but she was very firm in how she meant it. Okay, she absolutely meant it. So you don't cross my mom, period. So I was like, okay, we can't screw up. So here my best friend, her name is Pollyanna. Pollyanna and I had our horses. We had Poco and Sai, and we would go ride. And my mom's like, you guys can go ride by yourselves, but you do anything wrong and you will not be able to do this anymore. So, and I remember, I don't remember if both of us or just Pollyanna got an English saddle for Christmas or Easter. It was Easter. And so I remember this one time we are out riding and we both had English saddles on, and she had just gotten her English saddle, and we were pretending that we were riding race horses. So we had our stirrups jacked up as high as they would go, and we were riding around this big field, and we were going as fast as we could. And I was on the inside, and so she was on the outside, so she was on the woods line. And we are coming around the corner of this field, and there's like a low hanging branch, and I didn't move over. I totally take the blame for this, I guess, because there's a low hanging branch and she had nowhere to go and got clotheslined and flipped off of her horse. Okay. And her horse took off. And I was like, crap, if this horse goes home without her on, we're in trouble. And then we're not going to be able to go and trail ride by ourselves anymore. And we're like early teens. Okay. So, and it's like when you can go out and trail ride by yourselves, that's great. When you have to go with all the adults and walk on a trail ride, it's super boring. So, anyway, I check back and I'm like, you okay? And this was back in the time where, like, I never wore a helmet growing up. The only time we were required to wear a helmet was, and this includes bikes, horses, whatever, is at the state fair. That's the only time I ever, my entire childhood, had to wear a helmet. And that's just how it was then. So now it's different. Anyway, I think back and I'm like, gosh, we're so lucky that our skulls are still intact for all the stuff that we did as kids. Um, but I check back, I'm like, are you okay? She's like, I'm fine, go get my horse. And so I take off after her horse. Luckily, mine was faster. And I was able to catch up to him in like the field nearby. So he didn't make it home. So there was like my parents' place, and there's a field, and there's another field. So we were in three fields over. And it was so like the adrenaline going. And it was like, it was not only the, oh my gosh, well, for one, I'm in a saddle that I'm not used to riding in, and I'm like going Mach 10 across this field, which is always something we looked forward to. But I'm trying to catch her horse, and I'm worried that, about her being hurt. And then I'm also worried about us having privileges taken away. So it was like mega adrenaline. But I think back on that kind of stuff, and I'm like, dang, I had some really great times on horses as kids, and I got to spend so much time in the woods on a horse, ripping down the trails and just moseying along with my best friend. And I mean, hours and hours and hours on the back of a horse from the time, I mean, I don't remember a day in my life that I haven't been on a horse. And I don't want to ever have a day in my life that I can't have horses or be on a horse or whatever. So that's the experience part of it. Now let me tell you this. So like I had a lot of real life experience. I did a lot of really dumb stuff. I got hurt. I got in trouble. I thanked my lucky stars for things not turning out worse than they were. When I was 10 years old, I had my very first lesson. Like I had no lessons as a kid, but I was lucky because my mom had a lot of horse sense. She had a lot of experience. I can't say that she never had lessons either. Everything about her was self-taught, and she learned from her great grandfather who he died when I was 20. Okay. So my great grandpa, and my mom grew up with him. He used ponies to plow fields. We did pony pulls. So I got to spend a lot of time with him when I was a kid, and he lived to be 93. So, and worked with his ponies almost right up till the end. So I was very fortunate to see how horses can be used for a job, to see all the things. I mean, I feel like that was so long ago, but it really wasn't. And so I look at training nowadays and how people walk right into my students, just looking at this, how they, from little tiny kids, they walk right into my program and they learn so much right from the beginning, And I think about that. I'm like, gosh, would that have been great to be able to have like structure right from the beginning? And then I'm like, well, I don't know. I really like the way I went about it, but it probably could have saved me a lot of, well, I don't know. It would have saved my horse a lot. My horse probably went through a lot for me because I didn't know a lot of things. I barrel raced, and I was like, I lived and breathed barrel racing. That was my thing. And I had a great horse who's so good at it. He was just absolutely fantastic. And I had him from when he was young, and did all of his training, and was very proud of everything that I did with him. And we accomplished so much. Um, but I wanted to, how did this work? I'm trying to remember. It'd be nice if I had my mom here to explain this with me. But I remember when I got my horse Poco, I was 10 years old, and she wanted me to do everything with him. And I had had a couple of ponies before that I had barrel raced, and pretty much just barrel raced. I didn't really do much of anything else except for at our local fun shows and stuff. But now I had like an actual horse, and I was expected to, do certain things at horse shows. So my mom wanted me to do English and Western pleasure and trail and speed events, but I had to do it in a certain way. And I appreciate that so much. Like she was very particular, making sure that I didn't push my horse too much, meaning, he was going to be used for barrel racing, but I have this 4-year-old Greenbroke horse. You're not going to just take him out and run him, basically, is the way she put it. And she had a horse that she started very young with speed events, and the horse was very controllable, very sane, but she would get really hot and excited. And so my mom learned from that experience and didn't want me to have the same issues with my horses. So she's like, you're going to do everything with this horse and make him very well rounded, quiet. And you're going to learn all these things too because it's good for you. Okay. So, but the problem is, I guess, is that I didn't have a lot of education to do any of that stuff. So here, I mean, just took like, take me. I'm used to like riding through the woods and barrel racing, and that's my thing. And you're going to throw me in a Western pleasure class because that's going to go over well, but with no training. But I figured it out and it made it work. But was I ever really good at it? No. Barrel racing was my thing. Trail riding was my thing. I had my things. But I'm so thankful for my 3 riding lessons that I had in my life. Okay. And that was, I rode English on my 4-H leader's horse. She gave riding lessons. Her name's Eileen. Best 4-H leader anybody could ever ask for. Best riding instructor. The lady is so funny, and she rides with my mom still to this day, and she's just a hoot. She's really fun. She's entertaining, and she knows what she's talking about. And so I listened to her, and I had my 3 lessons, and she helped me, I would say, a ton with what I needed to know, to do what I was doing. Could I have used a weekly lesson? Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. But it is what it is. It was kind of one of those things where I think, you can afford, okay, I own a horse and I'm going to horse shows. You can afford that, or you can afford taking lessons and not doing those other things, so that's just how it was. And you kind of have to, do what you can with what you have. Okay. And do your best until you know better and then do better. So I, I didn't work with a trainer until, let's see, it was 1991 when I took my 3 English lessons. Okay. And it wasn't until 2006 that I worked with a trainer again. So I want you to kind of wrap your brain around that a little bit. That is all that time was self-taught. And um I read every book I could get my hands on. I watched every video I could. And this isn't where we had like a ton of, YouTube was just kind of becoming a thing. There really wasn't a lot out there unless you were to like buy DVDs or something like that. So I bought every DVD I could because, and I didn't know like where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, like as far as horse stuff. Okay. I just knew that everything that I did, I wanted it to involve horses. Okay. I knew I wanted so much. I was like a sponge. I wanted all this information, but I didn't know where to get it. Okay. So I started working with a dressage trainer because the barn that I was managing, living at, there was a dressage trainer there, and he was fantastic. And I rode with him all the time. And that was 2006. Okay. So in 2006 is when I started taking horses in for training, um, for the public. And I had just the knowledge that I had riding horses growing up, nothing formal. Okay. No formal training. So me as a barrel racer riding with this dressage trainer, I learned so much from him, and it just kind of opened up, um, my horizons a lot and made me think, gosh, this dressage stuff is really helping my barrel racing. And dressage is just French for training. And I really enjoyed that. But again, so I had him to work with, but it was more of we just rode together. I would take lessons as often as I could, but I was dirt poor and couldn't really, manage to do that. And Jason and we had only been married for a couple of years, and we just didn't have much. So I took what I could. Okay. Well, then I started buying. I'm like, well, I'll buy DVDs, as many as I can. So I took on these horses for training, and I would put that money back into buying education. Okay. So everything that I could anyway. So I remember buying Stacy Westfall DVDs, John Lyons, Richard Shrake, Clinton Anderson, Sherry Servey, and Oh my gosh, I just forgot her name. Charmaine James. How could I forget Charmaine James? And I would read articles from Martha Josie. There were so many people that I followed. Oh, Bob Avila, Avila, however you say that, and Al Dunning. So as you can, for those of you who know those names, know that their training is, I mean, they are like all over the board. Okay, so their methods are not really all that similar. So here's me. I'm like, never used a rope halter before. And I'm like, I think I really want to use rope halters because I see some value in them. I just don't really like, I, I didn't really understand how they worked completely. All I knew is that my cute little quarter horse Poco, who I had to trailer every day to the barn from my parents' place to give lessons with, I used a nylon halter with the buckles, okay, or leather halter. I used one of those sometimes, and it would rub a spot on his cheek. So I would haul him up in my trailer and he'd sit there tied for a while and he'd be eating hay and it would rub a spot on his cheek. And I'm like, gosh, this buckle is, or this metal part is rubbing my horse's hide off. This can't be good. Like, this is not comfortable for him. So what can I find that's better? And then I'm like, well, I want to start using rope halters. So then I started finding what's the best rope halters to use. Okay. So I went that direction. So then I'm like, well, I'm going to follow trainers that use rope halters because I want to use rope halters. And so I just kind of darted in all these different directions. I spent several years confusing my horses to no end and being confused myself. I'm like, well, this is how this person does it. Well, this is how Julie Goodnight does it. This is how John Lyons does that. This is how Clinton Anderson does it. Like, what should I do? Because they all do it different. And so um it's a struggle. The struggle is so real. And so for those of you who are out there and you're just trying to find your way, just understand that those of us who have been a professional in the horse world for years, a lot of us may have started out that exact same way, feeling totally lost, confused, not knowing where to go. At least, I look at my background and I'm like, well, I had family that had horses. So at least I grew up with it. But I think about people who just decide to buy horses and maybe they're adults or whatever, or they're buying horses for their kids. Gosh, where do you start if you don't have an instructor that you're already working with? So it's really hard to find what works best for you. And let me tell you that once I started working with a dressage trainer, because I spent a lot of time frustrated. I'm like, why are all these people understanding how to do certain things and I don't know how to do that? Like, how do they get that? I can't get that with my horse. I'm confusing my horse. I'm frustrated. This is not working. And so I was like determined from that moment when I became so aware of, hey, I can be better, but I just don't know how. I just started digging everywhere that I could. And I was like, wow, every horse that I work with, I learned something new from. So I charged $150 for 30 days of training. And I took any horse that anybody would bring me. And I started a lot of horses. And luckily I got a lot of really nice horses, but for only charging $150, I got some horses that were not so nice. And I learned a lot from them. There's horses that I took for training and I'm like, I'm not going to charge you anything. I'm just going to give you your horse back because I feel like it's too dangerous for me or whatever, like taking a horse that was in its mid-teens that wasn't broke and had all these issues. It was just not smart of me to do that. But I'm like, at that point, I wanted all the experience I could get. So the more horses I could get my hands on, the better. So, but here's where my world changed. I was invited, I think this was 2000 and it was either 2007 or 2008. A good friend of mine invited me to go to a Lee Smith clinic. And I was like, oh, like I had seen Richard Shrake do a clinic and I think I kind of participated in it a little bit, but and there is who else, maybe a couple other small clinics that I sort of watched, but nothing. Like I had not seen or been involved in a clinic at all because where I live, Very small community, okay? Very small horse world. There's really not much. You have to travel if you're going to go and find anything. And so my husband and I had been traveling to these big barrel races. I had my WPRA permit and we were traveling all over the Midwest doing these barrel races. And I was just like, gosh, I'm just so, things could be so much better, but how? And I couldn't really even pick a barrel racer that I wanted to work with as far as like a clinician. And the clinics were so far away. It was hard for me to find what I was looking for. So, but my friend that invited me to a Lee Smith clinic, oh my gosh, that opened up my eyes to a totally different world that I had never seen before. And if you haven't ridden with Lee Smith, I definitely recommend checking her out. She is a wonderful woman and she is so wise. I mean, the woman is she has a lot of knowledge when it comes to horsemanship and she's got great stories. She's worked with some of the absolute best horsemen in the world. And she was a student of Ray Hunt's. And if you're not familiar with who Ray Hunt is, check him out. But so this clinic that I went to, I was like, so excited because we hauled our horses to Wisconsin and it was a weekend long deal and we went with a group of people and it was just amazing and I learned so much and I learned basic stuff. So there's a saying that beginner riders want to learn intermediate stuff, intermediate riders want to learn advanced stuff, horsemanship, and advanced riders want to learn the basics of horsemanship. And it took me many years to really figure that out because I just wanted to go bigger, faster, fancier, whatever, all the time. And Lee hand delivered me a gigantic humble pie. Like she didn't give me a slice, she gave me the whole pie. And I choked it down. And I can't thank her enough for doing that, and she was just doing her job. I just happened to show up. And really the person that I need to thank is my friend Nancy, who invited me to go on this trip. And Nancy she didn't want to drive. So she wanted someone to go with who could drive. So I was like, heck yeah, I'll drive. And that's what brought me there, and I'm so thankful that because I'm like, where would I have been now in my horsemanship had I not gone with to that one clinic? So where I'm going with all this is from there, because I watched Lee ride and I was like, oh my gosh, like this woman is so she just had so much finesse to everything she did, and the horses just understood her. And it's it was just beautiful to watch, and I'm like, I've never really seen that before. I'm not used to seeing that at our local shows or rodeos that I've been to. Been to a lot of rodeos throughout the Midwest. You don't see that kind of horsemanship at rodeos. And you definitely don't see it at the county fair. So you see every, backyard, whatever showing up at that kind of stuff. So I was really impressed. And so one thing led to another. And now I'm like saving every penny that I can. And we're living off of ramen noodles and whatever, we can scrape by on because I just want to go to clinics. And it was pretty much from then forward that I was like, oh man, I can't get enough of this. And so from there, I'm like, well, who else can I ride with? Because Lee only would come, close enough to us a couple times a year. And so then I had to find, I'm like, who else can I work with that has a similar type of horsemanship that she does? Because then I realized I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so confusing when I was following all these different trainers. And then I started to think, I'm like, oh, did I really want to learn that? Maybe that wasn't the best thing for me to learn because I really like the way that this person does it. And that person maybe was a little bit too rough or just not my style. And it started to really shape me as who I am as a teacher. So all this time I'm giving riding lessons and teaching kids and adults alike, and working with people's horses. And I just kept practicing. I just kept getting better, and I kept teaching better stuff. And the more I learned, the more they learned. And it just was a really great progression. And it's been so fun to watch over the last so many years. So, and then in 2010, we bought our farm. And then I had the opportunity to start hosting clinics. So I started bringing Lee Smith to my barn, and that was a really big deal. I also brought um, Rachel Ory and Tom Pearson. I brought Rick Cornwell. I brought Tracy Porter and TJ Cliborn. Who else has done clinics at my barn? But it was really great because I'm like, oh man, I can bring these people right to my place. And that was during the time too that I was having babies. So I had my kids and stuff. So it was really hard for me to travel elsewhere, but it was easy for me to bring people to my barn and for me to learn. But I learned what type of people I wanted to work with. And the more people I met, the more I learned. So I found that the common denominator that I really liked of everybody that, I would work with, I really liked people that had a background of working with Ray Hunt. So I started seeking out students of Ray Hunt that would teach, and I found Buck Brannaman. And so then I started traveling and riding with Buck, and continued to ride with Lee as well. And then I met Barb Gerbitz and rode with her. So it just kind of snowballs. But I found common ground. Okay. I followed that likeness instead of dashing out all over. Now, let me tell you about a problem that I've had over the years. So this student that reached out to me today, she wants to attend a clinic, okay, and wanted to know what I thought. And I told her that I think that she can definitely learn from it. And I said, you take away what works for you, you leave what doesn't. That's where it gets complicated because you got to think, what are your core values with what you want to achieve with your horse? And so like for me, I am very much against gimmicks, and I want my horse to be soft because my hands are soft. I don't use draw reins, I don't use side reins, I don't use gimmicky type things. Um and I want to be able to communicate with my horse in the most natural way for them possible. Like I really want to listen to my horse. It's not a cookie cutter thing where every horse is the same. It's all situational. You treat each horse individually and you work with their needs, their specific needs. Every horse is very different. And so anyway, this particular student of mine though, gosh, she's been in my program for years. She's got her own horse, and I think it's a great thing for her to go and learn from others. She'll know what's going to work for her. She'll know what she's going to be like, no, maybe that doesn't work out for my horse. And then she'll know, hey, that really helped me. And that's great. But here's where it gets really confusing. So I had, and this girl's she's like 12. So 12, 13. So she's old enough to understand these things. Where years ago I had kids that were a little younger, say like 8 to 11, and just didn't have the experience level yet too. So like they didn't have their own horses. And I'm not saying anything bad about Pony Club, period. I've been asked to be an instructor for Pony Club for years. I've been asked multiple times, and I read the manuals, and I personally, I was like, well, I don't believe in a lot of the things that are in there. Like there's a lot of rules that go with Pony Club, and which is great. You have to have rules, but they just didn't fit with what I believed and what I taught. So for me, it was difficult for me to go down that road. Okay. So does that mean that I don't encourage people to do Pony Club? No, I encourage people to go to Pony Club. I want my daughter to do Pony Club. But there's just differences. Okay. So like for instance, I had a student who wanted to do my program, does not own their own horse, wanted to do my program as a beginner rider and do Pony Club as a beginner rider. And the problems that would come up from that is the student would come to my barn doing certain things like that she learned at Pony Club that I teach differently with my horses. And then she would go back to pony club and do things totally different, you know? And so, I mean, little things like how to lead a horse, how to tie a horse, um, that what type of halters to use, that kind of stuff. It was so confusing for a beginner to be in totally two different worlds. Okay. So my recommendation to them was I don't care which way you go, but your child is getting so confused by having two totally different programs. You have to pick one for starters. Once a rider is and it's not even just young riders. It's beginner riders in general. Okay. So when you're new at doing things, like for me, I could look at all this different stuff and like I said, I totally confused my horse and confused myself on things, but I still could get out there and ride and get things accomplished. And I started to learn what works, what doesn't, and I could throw the other stuff away. But beginner riders and kids especially are so impressionable and so like they just don't understand that. So my advice is if you are a beginner rider, find a program that is going to work for you and stick with that program until you have enough education to move on to learning different things. Okay. So like for my students, anytime I bring a trainer into my barn, it is something that they are a trainer that I would want my students to ride with as well because I know they're going to learn very similar things along the same lines of horsemanship. Okay. They're not going to be learning totally different stuff. So, like having, I'll give you an example. Okay. Here's another thing too, just to kind of explain. I had one student one time, my dog is dreaming. Listen. Sorry, I got sidetracked. It's so cute when puppies, or well, she's not a puppy anymore, she's 2. But when they lay there and they woof and then their little paws and stuff go, yeah, that's what she's doing. She's right there. So anyway, sorry for the cuteness interruption. So I had a student and I'm watching her ride one day and I'm like, and she was like maybe 12 or 13. And I said, why are you doing that? And she's riding her horse that she owned at the time. And she's seesawing with the reins. And I'm like, where did you, because she would never learn to do that in my barn. Okay. So I'm like, where did you learn to do that? She's like, oh, well, I saw the riders who won the Western pleasure classes at the fair were doing that. I'm like, oh. And so I explained how, I don't allow stuff like that in my barn. We do not seesaw our reins back and forth on the horse's mouth. She was trying to get the horse to drop its head. And that to me it's not okay. Because it's aggravating to the horse. It can cause pain. We don't do that with our bit. So I showed her a way that is a little bit more gentle that she can do it and explained it to like the fullest. Okay. I explained it as good as I could for her age and experience level. But so stuff like that. So it's hard when people go and see all these different things and learn from so many different people when they can't tell the difference of what's going to work for them and what's not. They're so impressionable. Okay. So that's my advice is to find something and stick with it. And if you don't know where to start at all, so if you are just new to horses and you have no idea where to start out, ask around in your community. Find somebody and ask around what's a good what place has a good reputation. Okay. So most of the students that are at my barn, all of the students that are at my barn, it's all been word of mouth. I don't advertise, nothing like that. It's all word of mouth, and that's how people find us, and it works out really, really good. Um, and another thing too is something that I would recommend. So if you're not sure where to go, and this is what I saw, like I said with Lee Smith, when I watched her ride a horse, I was like, oh my gosh, like the woman is just like, I'm not seeing her do anything. Like she's just communicating with this horse that's not even hers. and like that she just got on and this horse is doing everything she's asking it and I'm not seeing her do a thing. And that is wonderful. So I I always encourage people. I'm like, go to horse shows, go to local events, whatever, and watch people ride. And find somebody who you really like the way they ride. There are riders where as soon as the judge has their head turned, that rider's cranking on the horse's reins and getting it to bring its head down. I don't want to ride like those people. I don't want to look like those people or those people who are spurring their horse when the judge has its back turned. But you watch the people. Watch how they clean out their stalls. Watch how they groom their horses. Watch how they lead their horse from point A to point B. Watch how they handle their horse when it's in the trailer. Watch them load it in a trailer. Watch all of those things. And when you see somebody that you're like, gosh, I really want to have horsemanship skills like you do, go talk to that person and be like, hey, I really like what I see with you working with your horse. If you don't, if you're not a trainer, like, can you recommend somebody who would teach in the style that you do? Because that works for me. Don't be afraid to do that. Anytime that you do that with somebody, if you walk up to somebody and say something like that, it is the nicest compliment you could possibly give them. Okay. And, look at the horses. Are the horses happy? Find the people whose horses look happy. Okay. Go to them. They're the type of people that you want to go to. Okay. Some people are out there and they ride the way they ride because they just want to win. And that's important to them. And that's not important to me. I'm I will go to an event and I am the last person who is caring about, winning something. If I go out there and I have a great ride with my horse, or my horse like improves on something or is braver than I thought they would be or whatever, I'm so happy. Like that's all that really matters to me. And actually, my husband gets a little annoyed with me because I'm like, I just don't care. I'm not competitive about that. I am so competitive with myself. Like I just want to be better than I was. And if I can be consistently improving myself, then I'm winning. I am absolutely winning. So, all right, I talked a lot and I put a lot of information out there. And so now is the time where, because I know some people, when there's a live stream video, people get annoyed with with me talking in the comments. So I waited to the end. I'm going to go back and kind of read some of them and answer questions. So if anybody has questions, now is the time to go ahead and ask those. Okay. So and the same stuff, everything that I just said applies to finding like somebody to train your horse. If you're going to find somebody to train your horse and you're a very um gentle, soft-spoken individual, you don't want to go find a rough and tough cowboy to break your horse, and ride it with spurs and all this stuff when you don't plan to ride that way. Find somebody who's going to ride the way that you ride and or the closest to you. And go that direction. Okay. So I hope this was helpful to somebody. I hope you enjoyed it. All right. So who has questions? I'm trying to see who's all here. Boy, we got a lot of people in the chat tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This was so not planned. It was like, I just all of a sudden I was like, hey, I kind of want to do a video. Somebody says I should do more trail rides with my kids. I agree with you. I should do more trail rides with my kids. Kids and I actually rode a fair amount this summer, and we had so much fun. Bodie is now galloping down the trail, so we just like take off and we just have the best time. We play cops and robbers in the woods, and we pretend that my mom is we're the robbers. Tova and Bodie and I are the robbers, and my mom and her boarders and such that we ride with, they're the cops. And so we just take off on them in the woods and we have so much fun. It makes it really fun to ride with kids when you play games. So you guys got I'm going to have to go back and read all of your comments because there's a lot of them on here and they're really good. Oh, thanks, Megan. I'm glad you enjoyed this topic. It really is so important. And you just feel like I've worked with trainers who have made me feel like dirt, they just made me feel so bad about everything that I do. And let me tell you guys too, I have to tell you about this. So I follow Amy Skinner on Facebook, and I've followed her for a couple of years, and actually several years. And I really like the things that Amy Skinner has to say. And if you don't follow her on Facebook, you should, because she writes really great stuff every day. She writes something. And she actually has 2 books out. I just got her second book. Haven't read it yet, but um she her first book was fantastic. I am not a big reader. I listen to audiobooks, and I read her book and I could not put it down. It was so good. And it just made me really think, and I'm like, gosh, I really need to meet her. I like her so much. So last summer, I that was one of my big educational things, as I went and worked with Amy Skinner. And it was really great to get to know her and to see how she works with her training horses. I kind of just sort of observed, followed her around. I helped her feed her horses. And that's the kind of stuff, like I said, find find people and how they interact with their horses with everything that they do. Okay. So like for me, all the trainers that I've worked with, I haven't really got to see them like in their environment, how they work with their horses, when nobody's watching. So with Amy, it was really great because I got to just hang out with her and follow her around and feed her horses, and it was great. So, and it just reassured me that, yep, she's the type of person that you want to work with, because man, she puts the horse first, definitely, always. And I love that. Um, Missy, absolutely. What does anyone gain from being belittled? It happens so often. And gosh, I sure hope that nobody has felt that way working with me. Um, because I know what it feels like to be that person, that's being made to feel like dirt, and it's just awful. So, I always I try so hard to make it a good learning environment, and it's so hard to teach people that, like that you need to improve. So many people come into my program thinking that they ought to know more than they do, and I'm like, why do you think you should know that? Or they'll make excuses like, oh, well, I haven't worked with my horse in a long time. He's usually not like this, or he knew this, he just forgot. And I'm like, no, like it's okay to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And that's how you get better. And it's totally okay to do that. And there shouldn't be any shame in anything there whatsoever. We all are where we're at, and we get better as we go, and that's okay. It's a natural progression. If you're putting the work into it, you're going to progress, and nobody should worry about that at all. And if you make a mistake, you just own it, you learn from it, you teach others from it, and you move on. And that's what I teach in my barn is, if you make a mistake, like I'll say things 100 times. Like I'll use this one example. um so I always tell everybody, make sure that the door to the arena is open wide enough before you go through it, because your horse is wider than you think, and then they have stirrups and everything else. So, and one gal, and she'll be watching this, and she'll see this, and she'll be like, "Oh, but didn't open the door wide enough. Horse goes through it, not enough room for the stirrups, and then knocks the door off the hinges. No big deal. It was fine. But oh my gosh, she was so worried about it. But sometimes we learn from, you can be told something or read about something and learn from it that way. But a lot of times it doesn't really sink in until there's some sort of a dramatic event that you learn from. Okay. So, like this gal, that was a dramatic event for her. Okay. And she felt so terrible to call me to tell me that my door fell off the hinges. And it was no big deal, but she's never done it again. And every time she sees somebody else coming through the door, she's like, hey, make sure the door is open wide enough. Like that's how we learn. And we should be proud of that, and say, gosh, I learned from my experiences. If she did the same thing again, then I'd be like, okay, like you need to learn. um but it's okay, you just move on. And I have learned the hard way so many times that I try so hard to teach everybody as much as I can, but there's just going to be those situations. It's just how it is. Okay, Pippa, you said how is the horse we bought for my mom? Oh, Toby is doing great. He's going on 2. And he is bigger than her mare, Gitta. And um Gitta is in some of my videos. But yeah, so he's like 15 hands. He's a big boy. And she did halter classes with him all last summer and he did great. So I don't think she'll ride him till he's probably 3. She doesn't like to start him too young. So maybe like in the fall when he's 2, but he's doing great. He's so beautiful. And oh, Megan had an important point too. People get too hung up on certain disciplines. Yes. Yes. So, that is so true, Megan. I have a lot of riders in my barn who are like, "Well, I want to ride English." And I'm like, "Well, that's fine, but what's I had a I had a girl yesterday. We had a birthday party here. What did she say? She said, "Well, I don't know how I'm going to do in Western because I'm used to riding English." And I said, as a rider, it doesn't matter what kind of tack you have. And what I love with my program, and this is one of the reasons why I called it versatile horsemanship, because I couldn't decide on any kind of discipline. Okay. And I'm like, I love barrel racing, but I love dressage, but I love jumping and I love endurance and I love trail riding and I love everything. I don't love Western pleasure. That's one thing I don't love because I feel like it's too political and becoming a very unnatural movement from the horse. But I love it when it's done a certain way. Okay. But I love everything. I love ranch roping. I love this. I love that. I love reining. I just can't stop. So to me, I try to convince riders, hey, I want to see you ride that horse bareback. And I want to see you ride that horse over there, English. And I want to see you ride that horse in a Western saddle. Now I want to see you do, you know what I mean? Like, let me see you ride it in a halter. Let me see you ride it in a bit. Let me see you ride it one-handed. Let me see you ride it two-handed. I think that every rider should be able to ride no matter what. Like most of the time I ride, I go out and jump on bareback with a halter and I'm getting all kinds of cool stuff done. But I had a foundation on my horse first before I went ahead and rode like that. But it's so good. It's so, so, so good to ride with a lot of different people. Okay. And reining is like the Western side of the dressage, Western side of dressage kind of deal. But um exactly, Megan. You can bounce ideas back and forth, and it will only make you grow. Okay, so like endurance horses are a lot of times, from what I've seen, and you listen to clinicians talk about it, like Buck Brannaman has a ton of stories about different things, but a lot of times endurance horses are the craziest bunch that are out there. And then you throw barrel horses into the mix and whatever. Oh my gosh, like there's a lot of crazy like horses who just can't handle certain situations. If every horse has a good foundation on them, same with every rider. Give them a good foundation, have them understand. I have riders who've been riding their whole life and they're like adults, older than me. They've been riding their whole life. They don't know how to do very basic maneuvers. They've always gotten on a horse, gone straight down a trail. That's it. If things went bad or if they needed to really maneuver their horse or something, things wouldn't go well. Or if they got on a horse that wasn't used to being ridden exactly like that, it just wouldn't work out. I've ridden with a girl who was jumping her horse 4-foot fences. Fabulous job. 16 hand horse. She was doing a great job. Put her on. I went with a trail ride with her on a very small, she rode a small gated horse and lost her mind. Like she was like crying because she was so terrified on this small horse because it moved differently. And I'm like, we're on a very safe trail ride. This is okay. You fly over fences on your massive horse. So it's just all about perspective and learning to adjust to fit all these different situations is so important. It makes for such better riders. The way I look at it, every day that I'm in my arena, I am training the future. I am training horses in the future. If I can teach these riders how to be trainers, how to work with horses who don't know things, whatever, I am helping every horse that they ever touch in their future because they understand the very basic stuff. I have riders come in and they immediately want to go to neck reining. Well, you're on a horse that doesn't understand what you're asking it. Um, so you're expected to use your legs, you're expected to be able to guide the horse's body, and all that. You can't just get on and neck rein them. It just isn't going to work. Um, sure, you can force it, but it's not going to be fun for both horse and rider. So, and it's not going to be healthy either in the long run because it makes it so horses are not moving the way that they could be, to stay sound and all that. I could go on and on and on about all this stuff. So, okay, I'm going to keep reading here now. All right. So, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to keep reading. Um, yes, Missy, exactly. Riding different horses teaches you so much different stuff. I know. I have 20 horses in my care. Um, when I say in my care, I mean I have 20 horses in my program. We have 35 here total, which is just blows my mind that there's that many horses here. But yeah, I own 15. I'm borrowing 5 for lessons. And it is so great to be able to work with all these different horses. And I have young horses right now. And I had training horses this summer that just really made me think so much and really made me grow a lot. I could never possibly be paid like what I do is not you don't become a horse trainer to get rich by any means. Um the thing is like I put so many hours into this one particular horse and I probably made like $2 an hour by the time it was all said and done because I put so much time into her. But I was trying to accomplish certain things, and you just can't put a time limit on that. It's so hard. So, um, but I love the fact that I know that I have projects in my field, and sometimes that's overwhelming, daunting because I'm like, well, I just got to get it done. So I have Ona. She's 5. She's not broke. I have Nash. He's 4. He's not broke. I have Manzer, he's gonna be 3, he's not broke. I have Sally, she is a mule who has a bit of a bucking problem and saddle fit issues and all these problems, and she's like 14, and that's okay. And who else do I have that's not broke? I think I only have 4 of my own. But then I have like a list of horses that are coming that need to be started this year, and which I'm really excited about. Like I'm excited about all of them. It's daunting to know I have all that work, but I'm like, does it really matter? Like it's no big deal. But the thing is every one of those horses is like, oh, fresh slate. Like I get to start all over again. I always tell people my oldest horses are my worst trained. And like Miss Kitty, for instance, she was so wonderful. She was such a wonderful lesson horse. Anybody could get on her and do anything with her. If they were gentle. If you got on that horse and you were firm, she was just going to be like, I'm not doing anything for you and I'm going to make it miserable. But, you know, had I known what I mean, I was 13 when that horse was born. Had I known then what I know now, oh my gosh, like she would be incredible. So I think about like what I got accomplished with that horse, knowing what I knew. Like, wow, horses are so smart, and they just do things in spite of you. And I look at Nika and I'm like, she's 21, 22. Um, and oh my gosh, had I known more then. And so I look at my youngsters like Manzer and Nash and Ona. I've been through some Ona and I have got a little baggage, but that's okay. We're working through it. But Manzer and Nash are like clean slate. Manzer is the cleanest slate I've ever had. And I can't wait because I'm like, oh gosh, he's gonna be he was like born broke. It's just gonna be so different. But the more I learn, the more my horses know earlier. So basically, I'm just skipping all that nonsense. I put Nika through so much. Out of all the horses I've ever owned, Nika's been through the most. As far as like she went through the struggle of me learning all this stuff. And She just did what I needed her to do, and I appreciate her so much because she really didn't need to put up with all that. But um, so I'm excited. I'm excited to get him started. Um, I can't wait to go back and read all these comments. Yeah, so Pippa, you asked about my mom's colt and you said it'd be nice to see a video. I have so much video footage of that little guy. And I have video of him being gelded. So the vet is there and she's um castrating him, and but the vet tech is like right behind me, and she's like crumpling papers and doing all stuff. So I'm trying to edit it and I'm like, how do I edit this so that, because the vet is talking. So she's explaining what she's doing and then there's all this background noise and I'm like, so it's really stressful for me to edit those kind of videos because I'm like, I want to get stuff as it's happening, but I can't, I don't know how to edit that stuff out. Okay. So I will get that stuff too. It's just those are the videos that take me forever to take to video or to edit. You guys are really having a good time in the comments here. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Oh, Missy, yes, Sally, you come here. You should come here and you can hang out with Sally. I would absolutely love to introduce you to Sally and see what she thought of you because it's always really neat how she is so complicated, yet she's so easy in so many ways. Um, it's really fun. It's really, really fun. So I would love to introduce you to her. Okay. So let me tell you guys what I've got going on just with my channel since I took such a long hiatus and I'm back now and I'm going to be consistent. I promise. Um, You're going to see videos on my channel. Saturdays at noon is when the premiere will be posted. For now, if it's not a premiere, it'll just be a video posted at noon on Saturdays. This live stream was not planned. It was just an idea came into my head and I'm like, I got to talk about it and I want to talk to people. So that's how this worked out. And then memberships. So for those of you who don't know what memberships are, there's a join button on my channel. And if you want to become a member, there is a monthly fee for that. But I do post, so the videos that come out on Saturdays, anybody that's a member gets to see those videos. They get to watch them in advance. So there's that. And then we were on a pretty good streak every week doing a member live stream. And we're going to get back to that too, because I think that's really important. And then there's a whole slew of videos on there that are just for members. So if anybody's curious to know what you can do to watch more on the channel, that's what it is. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And please, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, it helps my channel so much. And I appreciate it very much. Okay. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.